All right, I make a motion to open the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we're open. And I guess we open it up to the entry point people to tell us how things are going with our survey.
Yeah, I'll let Eric give an update on where we are, and then we can discuss what we want to do with that, if we want to extend it or where we want to go from there.
Yeah, we are currently at 933 responses. So great effort so far. I believe we were a little bit above 1,000 is the sample size that we wanted, so we're really close to that. And so I think maybe a small push could get us there really easily, but that's, I guess, Brad, if you want to talk about them extending possibly and see what their thoughts are.
What, I talked to you a little bit about this last week. It sounded like we were at about 930 on Thursday too. So have we not had many responses in the last 2 or 3 days?
We had, I can only see week by week. So far we've had 14 this week. Last week we had 150.
Okay. So we're getting a few stragglers in.
Which,
yeah. My suggestion would be probably we continue for another week and maybe see if we could send out just a few reminders. I don't know what the best way to say that or to send those are, but what do you guys think?
I would like to extend it, me personally. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with extending it. How long are you thinking?
Go ahead.
Well, just as a minimum, on the town website, there's a note about the survey being available.
Yep.
And it's through February 9th at 5 PM is what's listed there, so.
Okay.
That's something you can consider just sticking with that for now.
Oh, yeah.
Just an FYI, that's how it reads on
Yeah.
the note.
Yeah, then why don't we just stick to the February 9th? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. I didn't realize that must be something did we put that in, Eric, when we started, or did it just automatically
I seem to
do
remember
like
us talking
a?
about
That's our website, not the.
Oh, your website. I'm sorry. Okay.
But I
Yes.
think it was all part of the, posting that we worked on, and we talked about, maybe extending it if need be, but I thought we said we'd have it out officially for a month from the time that
Yeah.
Jeff came down, so that would be a month, yeah.
Okay, then great. I don't think we need to extend it. Let's just go through the 9th. I do think it would be helpful to send out a reminder. I don't know what the best way to do that. If the town can just send some type of communication.
Yeah, we can try reposting it to the websites, Facebook, social media pages, and try to do another push on that way.
Well, and I've also checked with Sean. I haven't done it yet, only because I was waiting to see what kind of results we were gonna get for just the initial push. So I think tomorrow morning, I will be using WBSM's airwaves and see if we can get a few more from them, because I don't listen to it as much as I used to, but I have friends who do. And they're constantly telling me, hey, they're talking about it again. Hey, they're talking about it again. Hey, they're talking about it again. But I haven't tipped my toe in there yet, only because I wanted to see how we could do with just what we decided to do as far as pushing it out. So I think either tomorrow morning or sometime this week, I will be using their airwaves as a way of getting the message out and
Great.
engaging in conversation, and hopefully we can stir some more interest in the survey. What do you guys think?
Week and a half, let's do it.
Yeah?
Yeah, it sounds great. I think we'll probably get over that 1,000 just based on the pace we're going, but it has slowed down a little. So, if we had 150 last week, if we got another 150 this week, we'd be over what our goal was. And I think we've already got enough to be credible, but if we hit that statistically valid number, that certainly helps.
All right.
Second thing, Eric, do you want to talk about, we have not had any invoices or bills uploaded, or at least last time we talked, and that's not critical, but it certainly would be helpful just so we can do a little bit of, as we go out and do our survey of what everyone's charging, it helps to have a few actual bills from residents or businesses to validate. because a lot of times what you see on the websites, what's being advertised is not necessarily what the final number is. So if at a minimum, maybe the committee could upload their invoices for their current service and maybe talk to a few friends or family or businesses they know, it would be great. I don't think we expect to get more than 10 to 20 total, but anything we could do there would be helpful.
I could also put out an email to town department heads and some staff and ask them if they live in town, if they could share their bill with us. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Eric has some information just historically, but it's typically what is reported as the cost, and then you actually look at the actual invoices. What did you say typically, Eric? It's 30% higher?
Yeah, it differs, but it's always, for the most part, higher. It's generally not the advertised price that they're showing or what people are actually paying. And if people are sending those in, they can redact all information, all personal information of theirs. All we're looking for is the bill. And we do need a full bill so we can actually see if they have like their phone or TV tied in there. I need to take that out. So if we get a full bill to make sure I can see all the pricing, so I can make sure we're just recording internet, not actual other bundle costs, then that would be awesome.
Any questions on that?
Do we know where to upload those on the website? Has everyone seen that?
Yeah,
Or you can always email them to us as well. Either way.
that's pretty straightforward. I'll do mine.
All right, great. The next thing we wanted to do, so our final report will have information on legal considerations, financial considerations, obviously different models. I think Jeff is just going to take a little bit of time to discuss that with the group here and see if there's any questions or anything specifically that you hear that you might want to talk more about. So I'll turn that over to Jeff.
Everybody. I think I at least talked to Peter about this. I can't remember from the day I was out there. We had some conversations about legal, but there's really two primary issues. One is the municipal light question. And I think I had talked to at least some of you about the fact that KP Law is recommending that cities and towns use an enterprise fund instead of the municipal light plant mechanism. And I've got that documented. And I think I may have shared with Peter, but I can give you the language they use, but they have a pretty clear recommendation that cities and towns pursue an enterprise fund instead of municipal light plant for legal protection reasons. So that's one thing that's out there. Westport's already gone through the MLP process. So is Fairhaven. I don't know that either one of them will end up using it. They might, but it's just an issue you need to be aware of as you move forward. It's not a critical thing, but if you're going to invest cycles in getting an MLP to pass, it's got to go through town hall or town meeting if you're going to do it. So if you're going to go to that energy, I think it probably is worth evaluating that up front so you don't spend cycles on something that ends up just being wasted time. So that's one issue, and I'm happy to dig into that either with a subset of this group or with the group as a whole. I would start by just providing other content they've given to Quincy and New Bedford. They had a clear recommendation for New Bedford to do the enterprise fund. So that's one issue. And then the other I think we also talked about, which is betterment in Massachusetts. So when cities and towns pursue this, they generally want to pursue it as an opt-in model rather than mandating it. It's just, I think we all understand from a political point of view, whenever people are mandated, it's perceived as a tax, and functionally it probably is a tax. Whereas if we can go to the market and say, it's opt-in, and if you choose not to participate, it's not gonna show up as an invoice to you. If the town decides to backstop the debt, there is a potential that there is a universal requirement of the citizens, but I think most cities and towns are not going forward with spending any money here unless they have a pretty high level of confidence that they've got the support to make the network viable. So, but Betterment, is Quincy's diving into this right now, and because they're ahead of you in the process, they'll plow ground for you legally. But the question is, Massachusetts law clearly allows for betterment, but betterment generally is understood to be an improvement that's for every premise. In this case, the way the networks get built, we always would build enough fiber for every premise, but people that end up getting a monthly invoice are those that opt in or those that choose to participate. And so the question is whether there's a provision for that in Massachusetts law, or whether betterment is the only provision in Massachusetts law. And I think when we talked about it, Peter, I think you brought up garbage trash services, and that there is a precedent for that kind of thing. That is not, trash doesn't, well, I mean, I guess you could conceive of a garbage can as an piece of infrastructure, but that's what we're hoping, is that kind of service is enough of a analog that it'll be doable politically and under Massachusetts law. So any questions on either one of those two issues, MLP or betterment?
No, I think it would be great to get the information that you have about the enterprise fund. I don't know if I've seen that, so if you can send that to me, I can forward it to the rest of the committee.
Yeah, I will do that.
And then, what I was talking about with, in town, we have pay as you throw. So it's basically an enterprise fund that, you decide if you want the trash service or not, you pay for it. If you don't, then you just gotta show that, for trash service anyway, you gotta show that you have a company somewhere else, but we wouldn't be looking to do that, but, yeah, it's more of an
Does
enterprise
anybody
fund.
remember when that was put in place, whether there was any citation to Massachusetts code? I don't know if anybody was around when that was decided.
It was just done, we can look into it, it was just done not too long ago. When was
No,
the?
back when we had the last override fight.
Yeah, it was probably 10 years ago, maybe. It wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
And like I said, they just created an enterprise fund. And I think at the time they did state that trash pickup was listed as something you could charge extra for. So I don't know if it did go back to a mass code that there was certain things that you could use it for. I'm not sure. I can ask around.
Okay.
But there's not too many people left that put that into place, so.
Yeah, that's
I'll
right.
have to try to find somebody.
Gracie
Okay,
might know.
I'll do that now. I'll get you the information, Peter, and I'll point you to the specific paragraphs that talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Frank Gracie might be a good resource for that because he was, no, part of it. I remember him being part of it at the time.
Well, we can talk after.
Smart program.
Yeah, smart program.
Okay, and what's next?
Okay, so those are the two main legal considerations. And where you are in your process, if the town does go forward, I think there's going to be enough groups ahead of you that you're not going to be cutting new legal ground here. So we just need to pay attention to what's going on and what the different legal advisors are recommending.
Quick question for you. Out of all the municipalities you're dealing with in the state of Massachusetts, who's the one that's out in front the most?
So there are already networks built out in Western Mass, and they've been done under municipal light plant primarily. So those exist in Eastern Mass. So those are all towns. Quincy is the furthest along in terms of Eastern Mass and in terms of cities. And Quincy will be the first to do an open access network in Massachusetts. And they plan to take it to city council to fund the network. So they've already done design and engineering. We're now working on cost models for them. As soon as we've got that done, they're going to take it to city council to fund the construction. And they hope to connect 500 homes this year. So that'll be the first. But this betterment legal question is something they're taking up right now with their legal advisors.
Okay.
Thank you.
And next,
Brad, back to you. You're on mute.
Jeff, did you want to talk about any like financial considerations, various ways to fund these networks? Just
I think we covered that when I was back there. Fundamentally, it's going to be a question of whether the town wants to own the network and backstop the debt. That's going to be a question of perceived take rate and participation. So how much momentum is there behind the network? And the big question, I think the committee knows this, is the lack of density in Dartmouth, meaning homes per square mile is lower, which makes for a great life, but a more expensive network. So public ownership versus private ownership is the big financial question. The indication I got is the preference is for public ownership, but there's still, we've got to inform you with numbers. And what does that look like? And can the average resident participate in it at a lower cost than they're currently paying to Comcast? So, I think that's gonna be the real driver, is to build a new fiber network. What are those costs going to look like in comparison to Comcast?
Have you had any towns that have phased the build out in starting with the most dense areas, collecting money in a profitable manner, and using the enterprise fund retained earnings to help push out to the more expensive, less dense areas?
Yeah, we have actually had clients do that, and I think that is a potential path for you. I think Brad's going to talk to you about a design tool where we've got a partnership with a national construction firm, and the design tool they have helped co-develop will tell us the most desirable. I mean, it from density, but they'll tell us, give us an indication of what it's going to cost to build this part of the city versus this other part of the city. And so that actually shows up clearly, graphically with their tool. I think we can imagine what that is because we know what the more dense areas in Dartmouth are. But yes, there are cities that have taken that approach. It's obviously a slower approach, but I think it is a viable approach, because what the incumbents do is they come in and they want to just do the dense areas and then leave the less dense alone, which is part of your problem today.
and how were they successful? How successful were they with the build out through time?
So the first project we did actually took that approach, and they started in their first 2 years, they were sitting at around a 62% take rate for homes passed, and they're moving up towards 70% take rates today. So, I think that's very successful by any measure. We have not done it with a city or a town that looks like Dartmouth, meaning the number of square miles and the density factors that you're dealing with. So we would have to model that, and then build financial projections on how long would it take if we're gonna rely on reserves how would we space that out and then apply it to a financial modeling exercise?
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm good.
Okay. I guess Brad
We're
was up
good?
next. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit. So we talked, I believe a couple meetings ago, we talked about a design tool with BRE Networks, which is a group, just as a reminder. So when we provided our response to the proposal, we submitted our fees and we said, as an option, you could do a feasibility level design for the town. The additional fee for that is $1.10 per premise. So I believe roughly 5,000. Is that what we're looking in terms of premises, both households and businesses in the town? Is that a rough estimate?
I think so. I think that's the number we've got.
Yeah, I think I saw
That's an
4,900
average
somewhere.
of
So
6 people per
I think in our proposal, we talked about 5,000, like a little over $5,000 to do that.
Right?
Obviously, I mean, what we talked about, the design does is it gives us all the footage, the fiber counts, the number of vaults. Basically, they will overlay it on your town and give us the exact details of basically what the bill of materials is to build the network, to build a network. We can overlay that over any existing fiber, any infrastructure that's already in place. But from that, we use that to build out financial models. Without that, we basically are going to do estimates based, I mean, we'll still use the square mileage of the city, the distances, et cetera, but it'll be more of an estimate than an actual design. So we highly encourage the town to have us go ahead and do that. One thing we do want to talk for a second about, and I know there's a budget and we're fairly tight. I can't remember. I think I remember, Peter, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you said there may be a little bit additional in what you had in the budget for the project to cover a design, a basic design. As Jeff mentioned, we've started recently working with another company, an actual construction company that does a very similar service. The difference, I would say the primary difference is the BRE design, I would say, is more of a static report. So it kicks out a bill of materials, and then from that we can go in there and determine what the costs are, basically to complete that build. Quanta is the other company that we're working with now. Quanta's is much more interactive and kind of to the point that I believe it was Kevin that you said, Quanta, you can actually, once it's in there, it's very interactive. Once all the information is in there, we can actually say, okay, if we wanted to start, and we can turn on, basically, it creates a hexagon design of the entire town, and we can say, okay, we want to do what is the most cost-effective area to start with. And we can turn that on and off. Obviously, it has to be a continuous line. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a cluster. It could be a line through one area or a circle or anything like that, but it's much more interactive, gives us a lot more data. The problem on that side is that it's $2 per passing as opposed to $1.10. So if we were to do the entire town there, it would be about a $10,000 project versus about a $5,000 project with BRE. So I guess my first questions are, what are we thinking? Are we thinking we want to go through with the design? And if so, what is the budget amount that could be available for doing that?
I just want to clarify something before we get too far. If you're banking on the number of dwelling units, if there were 5,000, we would average 6 people per household. So I think there's going to be significantly more households, because that in my gut that tells me that it's a little bit low on the number of dwelling units and high on the average person per number of people per dwelling. So for your purposes of estimating costs, I think if it's per dwelling unit, then we're gonna be a little bit higher than that.
So let me ask a question related to that. I would assume that the boundaries would be the town limits. I mean, is that, or is there, we're not thinking of extending anywhere past actual Dartmouth as far as any type of study? Is that correct?
Right.
Correct.
So I can go to both of those entities and request that they, at no cost, request that they do, basically they can overlay their data and tell us what that number would be that they would have. They're looking at the plots, looking at everything. They've got all that data built in. So we can certainly go to them and ask them specifically, what exactly would that be? And then we can do the entire town, or we can do a subset of the town. So I think it's a good point. I mean, the number we were given, I think Jeff just kicked out that he saw something that said 11,000 households. Does that sound right?
Well, that would drop the average down to 3 or thereabouts, and that sounds reasonable to me. More reasonable than 6. So, I think if you're going to spitball it, then 11,000 is probably a good number. Do you guys think?
Yeah, that seems more accurate to me.
Yeah.
6 seems like a lot per house in Dartmouth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So working in IT in the assessor's office, there are 14,000 real estate parcels. So whether or not there's an actual house in a parcel, but there are 14,000 records in the assessor's database that we bill.
Yeah, so that 11,000 number sounds a lot better. Yeah, okay. So potentially we're looking at another $24,000 with the first one?
To get an estimation of the cost to build
The
the
system.
network out. Is
Yeah.
that what I'm hearing?
And
Yes,
with
to
the-
get a more accurate
And
estimation.
the
of the
Quanta
cost.
one is, actually, no, it's not, for BRE would be like another 11, 12, and then the
Yes.
Quanta one would be another 22, 23.
Yeah, and what I can do is I can go get them both to actually provide a quote. We can look at that, and again, that's why I don't know what the budgetary restraints are. We can certainly do a subset if we wanted to identify and say, I think if we did these 5,000 or these 8,000 or whatever that number is, we think that would be a good representation. I mean, the reality is, if you go forward with this, you're going to have to do constructability design, which is, on top of anything you do. This is just a feasibility level design. So in both cases, they're kind of going up the middle of the roads, and they haven't actually walked to see what needs to be underground, what can be overhead. They haven't looked at the poles to see what replacements or fixes they may have to do in that area. So regardless, it's an estimate. Typically a feasibility level design, they're going to get you within 10 to 20%. And then the constructible design is going to get you hopefully an actual bids and finalized numbers. So my point being, we don't have to do the entire town to get a pretty good idea. On the Quanta side, if we want to really take advantage of the tools that they have to kind of look at which areas are the most cost effective, then in that scenario, to get that functionality, we would want to do the entire town.
What are you guys thinking?
Well, how much money do we have?
Limitless
I feel like
funds.
I'm having a conversation in my house.
So town meeting,
How big of a car do you want?
town meeting approved 50,000, entry point, initial bid was 45. So that should leave us right now with 5,000.
Okay, so that none of the entry point fees include that.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
This, so, correct me if I'm wrong, so I can follow along properly. This will help you model the design of the system for cost for building it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the timeline on how quickly you'd need this information? So let's just say if we decided,
your
we decided to use
decision?
BRE,
Yes.
how quickly do you need that? How,
I would say, I mean, I would think we would want to make a decision by the next meeting as to whether or not we wanted to go forward with this. Just simply, I mean, we can always, I mean, we're on a schedule, but we're on your schedule. And if you need longer to make that decision, it just pushes out the final report a little bit. It's, we're going to probably need 4 to 5 weeks for a study to be completed.
So can I, if they didn't go with the extra report, I guess, what would they get just with the 45 now versus if they paid extra for the?
We will still do financial modeling, but there's going to obviously just be a lot more estimates in the financial modeling. So as I say, we can still look at the town and determine the average lot size, the average distance from premise to premise. What the studies will give us is exact. The study is going to tell us exactly how far from each premise, so if we run a line up a road, it's going to know exactly where that's an 80-foot drop or that's a 130-foot drop. It's going to know the next premise is 380 feet up the road. It's actually mapping each individual premise, each individual location, and mapping the exact distance, not only between premises, but from the backbone point to the actual drop, to where it actually would connect to the premise. So it's just it's going to be more accurate. I would say you're going to add 10 to 20% in accuracy in terms of the cost to build the network.
So if I heard you right, this is going to include the cost of the quote-unquote betterment from the network that we own, or is somehow owned, to the connectivity from basically the street to the house.
Yes.
And that will be a separate line item, because that will be treated separately hopefully by an individual ownership betterment.
Exactly. Yeah. It's completely,
to,
depends on what type of network you would go with. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's going to, for example, you need higher fiber count running up and down the streets based on how many premises that's going to feed. But once you get to that point and split it off, it's just, you don't need multiple fibers to each premise. So it's going to break it down by this many feet of 32 strand fiber, this many feet of 96, this many feet, whatever it is. It's going to break that down very specifically and map the entire town.
Okay.
okay.
Do you have any estimations of the take rates of towns that have dealt with coming from a single incumbent provider to what we're contemplating here?
If the single incumbent provider is not fiber,
Yep.
and then typically even at what I would call street rates, Google Fiber, companies like that are coming in and building in an area where there are no other fiber providers, what the market tends to estimate is 45%, that they can get to a 45% take rate over time. When it's municipally funded and municipally built, and in many cases the end cost is less by a decent amount from what the incumbents typically provide, you can expect that take rate to be higher in that. And as Jeff mentioned earlier, we have areas that we've worked with that are 60, 65 up to 70% plus take rate, and particularly, and if new builds, they're getting virtually 100% take rate with municipal owned and backstop networks.
Okay.
All right. I think this is a topic that we have to discuss amongst ourselves at length, I think.
So, knowing that we have $5,000 to deal with, could we ask, the companies to put together a proposal using that figure?
Absolutely.
So this way, the committee can see what they would get for the 5,000 and decide if,
Yes, yeah, I will reach out to both of them. I will get what they consider to be the total premises.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at it on their database, and that's going to tell them, that's the number they're actually going to map to, because that's what they have in their databases. They should be fairly close. I will look at that, and then I'll ask them what we can do for $5,000.
I think that would at least
get the conversation going, yeah, I agree with that completely. Anyone else?
So I think that makes sense.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, at least have some idea of what we're dealing with.
Okay, I will try to get that to you, Peter, by early next week,
Okay.
just so you can have that quite a bit prior to the next meeting if you want to have additional discussion.
Will that, will we be able to take a look at a partial build cost? Like a cost by region within the town?
That was what I was thinking.
With the results of this study?
Yes,
Okay, so
Yes.
we can say, okay, well, if we build just here, it's gonna cost this much. If we build here, it's gonna cost this much. If we build everywhere, and I assume there's gonna be some kind of economy in if we built it all as one project versus a stepwise project.
yeah, there will be some, but it's not, unless you chew off too small of a chunk at a time. A lot of networks are being built, 1,000 passings at a time.
Okay.
And as long as you have a good plan for a continuous route, you're not jumping around. Definitely, obviously, if the funds were there and you can build the entire thing at once, that's going to be the cheapest way to do it. But it's not going to add significant cost to build it segments at a time.
Okay.
So there is some validity to a stepped design.
Yes. Yeah. Any for-profit company that comes in and builds, that's exactly what they're going to do. And they're going to build an area and they're going to see if they get the take rate and see if it makes sense. And then from there, they'll choose to either expand or stop. In your case, where your ultimate goal would most likely be to get to every premise, it's a harder sell if you tell the citizens that we're going to start with this area and then we might go to other areas. But it has to make sense. It has to be feasible. So,
I have a quick question I just thought of. In those municipalities where they took a stepped process to building out their system, what did the incumbent do? Did they continue to provide service to the ones that weren't covered yet by the public system?
yes. Yeah, the income, again, it depends on,
They'll even do so once the.
it depends on where you go and pricing. And when I said some of the areas are getting virtually 100% for new customers, it's because it's a lot cheaper to build in Greenfield, where you're running the fiber lines at the same time as you're running all the other amenities, and particularly when if you're able to offer a service of $50 a month for a gig. And they're offering it at $70 a month for a gig, then eventually they're probably not going to get a high take rate. But what you often will find is the incumbents will drop their price initially to try and prevent the new system from even being built.
Yeah, they'll usually drop the price for like 3 years and lock you in so that,
Yeah.
it makes it difficult for the municipality to,
Yeah, I got that call from Comcast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really why it's key, if there's existing fiber throughout there, then coming in and building fiber, price is going to be the determining factor. If they're competing against non-fiber, then there is an advantage, obviously, of actually running fiber. So people will pay a little more, even if they understand that, even if there's a lower offer initially. Not everyone, though.
Anybody else? Anything else? I think we're good.
All right, that was all we wanted to cover, so we'll let you continue, and I'll get back to you, Peter. Jeff will send you the information on the enterprise fund, and I'll get some information from both of these companies as soon as I can.
Yep. Before we go separate ways, Jeff, I had a question for you. You came out and you met us and spent some time with our folks here, and I'm interested in hearing, did you hear anything that you expected or didn't expect in terms of the feedback and how it compared to other places that you visited? Like, what were some of your takeaways about Dartmouth and the residents?
Yeah. My main takeaways, so usually we have one or two naysayers in an audience. So when you open it up to the town, typically you're going to have one or two come in that, for whatever reasons, they're against the initiative. And I didn't have any of that. So all day long, there were no naysayers. So that was, usually it's not a majority, it's one or two, but we didn't have any of it. Probably the thing that surprises me the most, and I would say it's the same experience in Fairhaven, is Comcast pricing. And it was anecdotal. So Eric talked about getting actual invoices, and we should at least get those from the committee. And then if we can, extend to friends and family. But the number that I kept hearing was around $120 for Comcast. And to me, that's a clear indication that they know they don't have any competitors. And so they've got a maximum pricing mechanism in place for you. Even with, I shouldn't say this because we haven't done the analysis yet, but even with the lack of density in Dartmouth, the national number is around 70. So if you're in a suburban area, when the cable companies have to compete, they're going to be in the $70 to $75 range. When they don't have to compete, we see these higher numbers. So I think that's my main takeaway is you've got elevated pricing to compete against. I do think they will drop that pricing if the town goes forward with an initiative. And so there's going to be some turbulence related to that. But, the analysis we all want to see is what's the impact from the lack of density, and then how can we still go forward given that reality. It's favorable that Comcast's pricing is as elevated as it is. So I think that's the main one. And then, this density issue is kind of the primary thing in front of us. If we can solve for that in a reasonable way, then the enthusiasm's certainly there. And it came out loudest at the senior center. That group was energetic. It was the biggest audience. Peter was there with me and can vouch for it. But a lot of, often with seniors, they don't understand these technologies as well. And so they'll shy away from public participation in these processes. But that wasn't the case at all in Dartmouth. It was kind of the reverse. And I think part of that is some of them are on fixed incomes and paying a $220 bill for cable, and a lot of them still have phone. But for triple play is burdensome for them. So those are my main takeaways. I think this public support is good, strong. We've got to give you as good analysis as we can on what we expect. One other question that I drove out to, is it Horseneck? Am I getting that right?
Yep.
The beach.
Yep.
So I drove the town just because I wanted to look at the telephone poles and see how loaded. And on some of the main thoroughfares, there's a lot of cable on there, which can be concerning. But on a lot of the non-main thoroughfares, the poles look pretty good. meaning they're not overburdened. So, that's some downstream analysis is how can we design or engineer the network to stay off those main thoroughfares, because potentially you've got too much cable on those poles. And the problem, we talked about this in one of the meetings, is, even though Verizon no longer has customers throughout much of the footprint, there's no effort for them to go take abandoned cable down, and that becomes an impediment to progress. And I think some of that's going on in Dartmouth.
Yeah, we had a long discussion about that, I remember.
So, one other question I had before you guys left is, we're wrapping up the survey kind of, so what else, can we put together a list of other information you need? I know, Brad, you talked about meeting with the DPW or somebody at the DPW, so, if we can try to start getting those balls rolling too, so if you kind of give me a list of what we need to do to get you the rest of the information, that'd be great, and so we can try to like push those topics through in the next few weeks, to try to hit this March. I think originally we were talking about sometime in March for the full report to be completed, so just want to kind of keep that going. You're muted.
Yeah, Peter, I will get that to you. I was holding off on the meeting with the Department of Public Works for this discussion. So once we decide what we're going to do, I'd rather know what we're going to do, if anything, when we talk to them. So, but I'll get you a list of everything else we have left to complete
Okay.
and what we need from you.
I think, and just to echo Jeff, yeah, the Council on Aging, poor Jeff couldn't get through 10 minutes of his presentation, and I think he ended up having about 50 or 60 questions during it. They were very engaged, and they knew what they were paying a month for internet versus cable, because they told us both numbers. They said, oh, I'm paying $220 a month for my cable, but $140 of it's going to my internet. And so they had that information and right in hand. So it was, they were definitely engaged, and I haven't heard a negative part, except, the big question that everyone asks is, how's it gonna be funded? And so that's the $1 million question that, we gotta keep looking at.
Maybe, Peter, maybe we should go back to them and ask some of them to send those bills that they were so aware of.
Some of them had their bill in hand, we should have took it that day.
Should have scanned it real quick, but maybe that's a place to start, is go to the senior center and say, would you ask some people to send in their bills?
Yeah, I will ask her to pass it around.
Great.
All right, thank you very much for everything, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Look forward to the next
All right,
meeting.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, so I guess the big question on the table is this feasibility level design discussion. I'm of the thought process, since you brought it up, it's been in the back of my mind the entire time, and how you start with one section and then build out the rest and using an enterprise fund. That's where I was right from the get-go. And now hearing about how the lawyers are starting to tell all the municipalities to go with the enterprise fund style. I don't know, I'm just asking the question, and hopefully we can figure it out, but would it be wise to use the monies that we have available and just do it as if we were going to build it out in phases? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's like a construction project on many construction projects that I've done, you'll take the wind turbines, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So if we shrink the conversation down to phase 1 of the build, the numbers are smaller, get the good take rate, and then go from there. Phase 2, phase 3, if you divide the municipality into three parts, right? So would it be wise to just consider that right from the get-go? Instead of saying change the conversation, instead of being townwide, to let's just go to the staged build and get really solid data for building the primary part, the core of the system, which we've all discussed. Get the numbers for the core of the system locked in nice and tight by using the quanta. Because I like how it's a more detailed representation. That'll give us a solid number to work with instead of guessing. Because the moment you inject guessing into a project of this size, people get nervous. I meant to ask them a question if they've had any systems that have had, what does the overrun look like on some of the systems that they've built? Because there's always surprises. So I'm curious as to what you guys think about that.
Well, I mean, overruns are based on how good your assumptions are.
Exactly.
And like we could, if we were fairly conservative, then we reduce the chance of an overrun. If we cut it so it's more palatable on the upfront, and try to do sell it, then you're running the risk of overruns. I think it's more responsible to be as accurate as we can and maybe even a little extra conservative, just so we don't come out looking like, hey, this isn't the big dig,
Agreed. Agreed completely. That was I was actually gonna use that example. Look at the big dig. I was on that side. I was on that job for 6 years of my life. I saw what it was like.
Yeah.
But again, the question I'm asking is to rephrase the conversation, because this whole time we've been talking about the whole system, the whole system, the whole system, the whole system, and we can all agree that's a big number. That's a really big number. And we can't afford with the money, because the only other way to get money is to get that really, because I like data. Data is important to me. And if I got a choice between the BRE system and the Quanta system, the design, I want the Quanta one because it's that much more detailed. Every nut and bolt is counted. It's a little bit more precise to what we're going to be dealing with.
I walked in late. What's the difference in the price?
So
About a factor of 2.
yeah, so it's $1.10 a premise with the BRE, but it's not as detailed. And the Quanta system is $2 a premise, but it's very detailed. The numbers are gonna be really close to what we're gonna need. And that being the case, since we only have $4,500, of course, we'll have to see what they come back with as far as what they can do with the monies that we have available. The only other option is that we go back to town meeting and ask for more money, which is next to impossible, and will delay us till the next town meeting.
Yeah, I kind of wish that Entry Point had said, look, here's the stage, here's the costs, maybe we could have,
Asked for more money.
Asked for some more money and.
Yeah,
So I will tell you that before we did the RFP, we approached Entry Point, asked them for, what they've charged other communities, and their initial quote to us was $10,000 less than what they actually put their bid in for. So we asked for like an extra $10,000 on
Already.
top of what because we had this whole feasibility design and also the initial Entry Point number that, and again, they were just talking to us and said, we haven't looked at the proposal yet, and so, but after we put out the proposal and after we solicited bids, their number was originally 35 and then it went to 45.
all right, so correct me if I'm wrong here and see if everybody agrees with me with what you just told me. We spoke earlier, the word bait and switch came up, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so is it possible, and we know that they are in tune with all the companies that do all this stuff. Most general contractors have the same plumber and electrician that they all use, yeah? So there's room in their budget.
You can't change it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. There's room in their budget. Because they came in over what they initially told us. So they've got money in their pocket that we gave them, that they really don't. It's bottom line for them. But at the same time, they're looking at the big picture. it is conceivable that at 4,500, we might get what we're looking for because they've already got the pocket of cash. And they want to continue the rest of the project. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think that they're subbing out to a third party, so I don't know that they're gonna be able to.
They may actually.
Pull
do
out of their
that much.
pockets.
Yeah, then, like I said, I mean, in their defense, you know, it was about a year from the time that we talked to them before the RFP went out and they submitted bids. Things change, I get it, you know, but I was shocked when I saw the price when, like I said, we initially talked to them, you know, we asked a couple of vendors about were they charging for similar studies, and, you know, they were around the $30,000, like $35,000 mark. I will tell you that the other bids, I don't think we ever discussed the other bids that came in, because we just looked at the criteria, we didn't look at the actual awards, but all the other bids that came in were well over entry points fee, so it's not, you know, it's not like we ended up getting like the most expensive bid
Right.
too. You know, I think one company was 250,000, if I remember, right?
That probably would have been soup to nuts, the whole.
So,
the
but
whole
no,
thing, yeah.
I don't know, this was responding to the RFP.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The same RFP that everyone else was at, like around the $40,000 to $50,000 range, so, you know.
Back to the original conversation, what do you guys think about that? In shrinking the conversation and getting a nice detailed picture,
Of just one area, of just
Yeah.
one section.
the core of the system, which we all know is this quarter right here. Like we've
Where does
discussed.
that go to? Like what areas?
Well, I think it's gonna be important to know the cost of the whole project. Are you talking about getting a good study, or like using I don't remember the names,
Qantas.
the Qantas
the
study
Quanta.
for just like Route 6 and down?
I'm thinking something along the lines of, yeah, the core area of the town where the highest density is located. Get a nice detailed picture of that. And then we can estimate the north and south conservatively, so that way we don't have any overruns and everything like that. Because the name of the game, from talking to him just now, and I was glad that you asked that question, because I was gonna ask it myself, but the stepped build-out has always been, to me, the best course of action for this, because of our geographic design. So if we can concentrate on getting a core system, a solid number on that core system, and then using enterprise fund to keep building out, well then, once we've got this system in place, then we can look at doing that system. Get that done, detailed, and then we know how much that one's gonna be, and then that one's gonna be.
Well, let's see what we get back, I think.
I agree.
But I think that, I think it's gonna be important for us to have a pretty good idea, regardless of which vendor we choose, to know what the whole project's gonna be.
Right,
And be able, but have it broken down so we can say, okay, if we do this, this is gonna be it's gonna cost this much, but we're gonna hit this many households, our take rate's gonna be 50% on, thumbnail it. Okay. If we can raise X amount of dollars, grants, bonds, I don't know, I don't.
Neither do I.
I don't wanna be careful about, I don't wanna presuppose where the money's coming from yet. But if we can build a profitable area, then at least the enterprise fund can help. How much we're gonna develop towards how big that tag is, I don't know. Cause, I mean, we really, banking on enterprise fund retained earnings and profits is, let's say it ends up costing the net project, if we're charging $50 a month, and it ends up costing $40 a month. That means you're gonna get $10 a month from each household that you're in. And, even if you got half the households, and let's say that that 11,000 was right. So now we're talking about roughly 6,000 households that we're if we got half of the households, $10 a month, it's $60,000, a month going into an enterprise fund with retained earnings and profits. Now, that could really not be a significant amount of money when it comes to building out the rest of the network. I don't know what the cost of the network would be.
I agree with you in everything you just said. I'm also looking at it as what you just said, exactly, all right? But once we have the system in place, more people in the community will be aware of its existence, which will also help further the idea of expanding it and make it easier on town meeting for voting for more funding. Am I correct in that assumption?
Hey,
You understand what I'm
I know what
saying?
you're saying, yeah, the take rate would end up being higher.
Yeah,
Once
the
it's-
take
once
rate,
it's
the take rate will be
established.
high in that concentrated area, and word will get out, because people will be happy with their system. And a lot of those people, some of those people are town meeting members. I'm thinking way off in the distance here, because I can honestly see that this project, from what they're saying, it's gonna take some time.
Takes a lot of time.
It's gonna take a lot of time, exactly.
This is probably a 7-year.
Right,
project.
exactly, and it's kind of like, I hate to use this the way Bob Kraft built Gillette Stadium, but you go to Gillette Stadium today, you can barely see the stadium because he's built all these other buildings around it. So that's my thought process, is in that we build the core, and then we just keep branching it out, keep coming back to town meeting saying, hey, listen, this is the success we've had. This is how the system's working. We got 70% take rate. The enterprise fund is generating cash positive. That will be an incentive to continue the ball rolling. Because I think if we try to come at this, the whole thing one shot, everybody's gonna be like, yo, wait a minute. That's a big number. That's a really, really, really big number. So I think, go ahead.
We don't know what the number is.
True story.
We might be pleasantly surprised. I think we're supposing a big number, but it may or may not be a big number, but whose opinions is big? Ultimately, we're gonna have to figure out what each stage, if it is staged, or even add them up, the whole project is gonna cost. And then we're gonna have to figure out what are our sources of funds, like what are there grants still out there?
Right.
Like,
Another thing that it just entered in my head, again, we got the municipality, it's divided into 3 sections. $4,500 gets us, if we use the BRE model, roughly 4,000 homes, yeah? So instead of using it all in just one area, what if we used it for piece of the center, piece of the south, piece of the north, and that will allow us to better estimate the cost of the build-out.
So I guess my question is my understanding that they're gonna come back to us with the full number for the feasibility study for the whole town? Is that what's happening?
I think what I asked them for was knowing that we had $5,000 to spend,
What could we get
what could
away-
we get for
Yeah,
the
what could we get?
$5,000? Because I mean, I think, like, Saul said, to ask for extra money, it's just gonna put, I mean,
Yeah,
your
no.
town meeting's not until June, it just puts everything off, like, just,
It's like one of those house hunting shows where the young couple has the expectation and like, what's $5,000 get us? And it's.
I mean, they came
Countertops.
they came to us
Free
with a
bath,
$5,100 number.
By the beach.
Yeah.
What?
They came to us with a $5,100 number for that first company, not the Quantum.
Quantum.
Not Quantum, but the other company was, they put in an email that it was $5,100. So I'm assuming before they spit out that number, they must have done some type of research that,
Yeah.
Was that for the whole town?
that's what I assume, that, like I said, that's the email I have that said, it costs around $5,100. Now, if maybe had some bad numbers that they were looking at, or,
well, I think part of the problem was, at least Brad's it was Brad, right?
Yeah.
You know, if he was banking on the fact that there was 5,000 dwellings
Right.
in the town, that's where a lot of the problem shows up. Because just quick math, I was like, no way do we have an average household of 6 people.
Yeah, no. Well, I like your idea, Saul, of just taking the money, using the Quantis, and just focusing on one dense area.
Are you familiar with these two vendors? No, okay.
I'm just curious to hear why
Well, I support that because ultimately I think whatever the number's gonna be, it's gonna be a large number for the town, and I think we're gonna have to scale this project. It's gonna have to be done in phases. I
It's
don't
not like
know.
we're building a high school. Where it's, it is
Exactly.
what it is.
Yeah,
We
this is
kind of
This is
have,
gonna take some time in.
yeah, this is gonna be I've always envisioned this since I thought it through and ran the math, as I say. It's always felt like it was gonna be staged, and even he just simply said that if Verizon comes in and builds fiber, that's exactly how they're gonna do it as well, right? So why not do what they do, because this is what they do, they know how to phase this in. So we should be looking at it as the same way, and I hate to say this, we understand the importance of this project and what it means for the community. But I've always maintained this since the very beginning. There is a very big political component to this, because everything goes through town meeting. We have to convince town meeting that this is in the proper and good interest of the municipality. And I've been in town meeting, and I've seen and heard the conversations and what it takes to get something to happen. So that is unfortunately an aspect of this project that we have to consider, is when we stand in front of town meeting and say, hey, listen, this is what we want to do, this is how much it's going to cost. The questions are going to start coming, and I think if we approach it in a smart, business-like fashion, right from the get-go, I think it will serve us better.
I think the problem with a phased build-out, especially being a municipality, is you're gonna create resentment for the people that live on the outskirts that don't have access to it, like the people that live in the hotspot. It's not like Verizon, a private company, coming in and starting a slow. This is a municipality that is run by the town. So you get the
Right.
guy way up on the Freetown line or way down at Round Hill. It's like, when the hell is this gonna get to me? And in a phased rollout, it may never happen. So that's the thing that I think, that's the hurdle that you're gonna face with residents looking at it that way.
I understand, I get.
I'm not saying that's
Right,
Yeah, I'm not
right.
saying that your idea is not good. I think
No,
it's
I
great.
get it.
I'm just thinking of like in the mind of like a town resident in a town that is very big geographically and already has had issues in the past of resentment
go
from one
back
side of the town to the other.
I'd like to go back 60 years when they started the sewer system and people were still using septic systems in both ends of the.
No,
If there was sewer envy then as well.
That's the only hurdle I foresee with that plan.
Yes.
Is impatience amongst the people that live on the outskirts. That's it, you know?
Agreed. I understand that. That was one of the first
I
things.
mean, that was one of the reasons why I originally, when we started this, was thinking of more the betterment side of it.
Got it.
And not so much the requiring people to connect, but more of if, like, this area of town had 50% of the people sign a paper saying that they wanted the service, well, if you had everything down like the main streets, then you could extend to that area, and those 50 people could sign up, pay for it, and then if other people joined, you could charge them connection fees and everything else to kind of make up the costs, but you wouldn't have to require them to sign up. It would be more of getting like an area, whether it be like a housing development or like, you know, a cul-de-sac or something, you know, but if the town itself down the main roads are at least built out, then you could easily add on those different pockets as people wanted to add on. And so this way you're not, like Aaron says, segregating a part of the town that may never get it, like way up the north end or the south end, like, you know. So that might be another way to look at it is, I understand that fiscally, yes, obviously the high density areas are gonna be better. But I think Aaron's right, that you're gonna, you know, you talk about having to get through town meeting, well,
If you're saying, oh, we're gonna build right around the town hall, well, people that, the couple of precincts that are up way in the north end, and the couple of precincts way down the south end, they're gonna say, well, I ain't voting for this, cause we're gonna spend money and it's not gonna better my precincts, so you'll get the 1 or 2 precincts here that are gonna do it, but is that enough to cover, to get your vote?
So then that goes back to the initial thing about who do we use and how do we just utilize them? So switching gears, because you make a very valid point, that maybe doing a segment in the south, the middle, and in the north with the 4,500 we have allotted to us.
Or at least the different segments of town, so like the highly populated area and then the like rural area.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
So this way, because then you could take that rural area and say, oh, we got 5 of those, so we can multiply that by 5, we got 6 or 7 highly dense areas, and you can multiply that, and kind of come up with your number. I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see what they come back with numbers.
Yes, I mean, we can think about it, but at the end of the day, we may get lucky. If the business and the analysis is slow right now, then maybe they'll say, all right, we'll do it.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
exactly what, back to when he was talking about how the number grew from the initial estimate to the actual costing. There's money in there somewhere, and it's not uncommon for somebody to do that. Say, hey, listen, you know what? They've only got 4,500. Gotta get this project.
Yeah, what are they gonna risk losing a multi-million-dollar project over a
Exactly.
$15,000 difference? I mean,
that's exactly what I'm
yeah.
saying.
I mean, do
Well,
they
let's see
really
what they
wanna,
come back
you know,
with. Let's start there.
And especially how the Quanta guys, they actually build these systems. That's what he said, right? Quanta is a contractor who builds these systems. So if they're like, hey, yeah, you know what? We'll cut them a deal if we're at the front of the line when it comes time to put it in.
We can't talk like that.
But you understand what I'm saying?
They wouldn't say it to us. That wouldn't be a comment they'd
Right.
make to us. It would be a comment that
Right.
they would negotiate, so.
Yeah.
Right.
So that comment isn't
Yeah.
relevant to us.
No, it's not. It didn't come from me. I'm just like thinking business-wise and how things might operate. Is that it for this conversation? And we're gonna sit back and wait and see what they have to
we got.
say?
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
We had a unexpected issue today. Our dear friend here has explained to us that Tuesdays are tough for him. So we open to the idea of maybe switching our meetings to Wednesday?
The only reason, and I'm not expecting the committee to change, so, long story short, when I agreed to do this and be on this committee, it was before my marriage hit the rocks. So now I have my kids Mondays and Tuesdays always, so it's putting a bit of a strain on me to get here on Tuesdays, but I'm not looking to, ruffle feathers and, have everyone else have to reschedule their lives for me, so.
I think 2
Well,
committee members were
That's
here.
worthy
too.
to me to reschedule, so I'm all for moving it to another day.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate that. It's,
Wednesday works for you, my friend.
Wednesdays or Thursdays, yeah.
Together as a team, we make it happen. In the words of the famous Mayor Menino, together we make it happen.
Just not the first Wednesday of the month for me. Any other Wednesdays?
Okay, so if we stick to the second Wednesday of the month, everything will be all right?
Yeah?
Fair enough.
Now, are we still every other week
So let me,
in this phase?
I mean, right now it was, but I can reach out to Entry Point and see if that second Wednesday works for them in February instead of the February 6th
So
meeting.
I do appreciate that.
So,
No worries,
No
that's,
worries, brother.
so let's just keep the 6th tentative on the books right now, but we'll try to move it to the second Wednesday instead to see if that works with them.
It'd be the
So
14th.
do it the second
Oh,
and fourth.
actually, that'd be the 14th, so I don't know how Valentine's Day feels for. Yeah, so,
Anything else, ladies and
so
gentlemen?
should we, with that being said, should we keep the 6th for February right now and then look to change it
Yeah,
going forward?
get in touch with them, see if they can move it to the 7th, you know what I mean? If it was that
Well,
too soon?
Chris said the first Wednesday is not good for him.
Oh, okay,
So-
yeah, that's right, all right.
So that's why I said, we were talking about the second, which is Valentine's Day, which I think is bad for a bunch of people.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Holiday.
I tell you though,
It's just, it's a corporate holiday, yeah, exactly.
I know.
going to like get a reservation, everything happens on that day. I'm like, you know what? Let's do it on the 15th.
Yeah, it's a Hallmark holiday. I'm fine with 14th, I don't have a problem with
I'm
it.
fine with the
I'm
14th
fine with
myself, yeah.
It doesn't bother me.
I mean, if you're gonna wait for one day a year to tell somebody that you love them, you're doing something wrong.
okay, I'll ask him.
All right, so I think that covers everything.
Approval of minutes
Yeah.
for
Oh.
November 29th.
Okay.
Who all was there? Because you can't vote if you weren't there.
29th?
I think everyone was,
Was that a full meeting?
I think so.
Yeah.
I sent out the packet. I didn't print out any of the,
Hang on.
you have the,
Um, wait a minute, hang on, I got the wrong one open here, I think.
The other thing is that if you stick with the 14th, you'll probably have the results of the survey, which cuts off the 9th.
I don't think Kevin was here on the 29th.
Okay.
Maybe you were
Yeah.
here on the 29th?
The meeting was called to order.
I don't think
I
you were.
saw.
Yeah.
You and I
Other
have been
members
trading
present,
back and
Aaron,
forth.
Sarah,
So,
Chris.
If you were there, I probably wasn't.
so,
I think I was there, you were at the
so you
next
guys
one.
have to vote
All
on
right,
it.
so I'll abstain.
I'll make a motion to
meeting?
approve.
Second.
Second.
I'll say aye. Everybody agree? Aye.
One
Alright.
abstention.
I'm terrible with these technicalities, you know, I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you guys.
Alright.
Make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Can I get a second?
Moved, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go.